It's raining today. Here we are. While my Pro Tools session loads, I first of all want to apologize for the low-tech way I'm doing this video. As you could probably see, I'm just filming my screen. Unfortunately, my system is not capable of capturing video while it deals with Pro Tools. Low buck it is. I want you guys to grab your favorite drink. I got some coffee going here, some delicious Colombian geisha. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. I don't necessarily want to make this just a Pro Tools lesson. I hope that what I show you will translate to whatever DAW you're using. Here's the place where you adjust the tempo in Pro Tools. I suggest not using the conductor, not for this kind of thing. One of my favorite things about Pro Tools is setting the tempo. You can do that simply by putting your mouse in here and hitting the T key. So maybe as you're playing the song on your phone or on a separate system or whatever, you can just tap along. Something like that. Now I happen to know it was 116. Oh, look at, I almost got it, 117. You can always just type it in. And you really want to get that right in the beginning. Believe it or not, even with MIDI tracks, some really funny things can happen if you start changing tempo around. It's possible. I actually did it for this song. I started at 110. I thought it was much slower. And then I went back to the recording and said, wait a minute. Now, after you have that going on, you want to bring in your click track. Currently, I have it disabled, so let me enable that. I'm going to make that active. Now I'm going to solo the click track, although we're only going to hear it for a second. Here we go. So that's going to establish our tempo. Now, sometimes I do leave the click track going on for the whole section of the song. However, that's not really inspiring. So what I tend to do is just use it as a count off. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I like to do is just bring in what I call a hi-hat guide. Once again, I have that disabled. And let's make that active. So let's solo that. What this enables me to do is have the click track counting off. And then just playing a real simple hi-hat pattern. And what I'll do is usually something like this. I'll do it on the drum set or on my Roland TD 11KV that I have to my left over here. Hopefully you guys have seen the studio tour. That's the video I put out just before this one. And, excuse me. And so what we do is lay the hi-hat down, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just creating something that feels a little more natural than just the click track going, because that can get pretty annoying. And when you do the hi-hat by hand like that, and even if you quantize it a little bit, you're gonna just get a better feeling track. So once the hi-hats are going, then I bring in the kit. Now, usually when I do the drums, I try to play it all at once. But lately, what I've been doing is playing the kick and snare in one pass and then doing the cymbals in another pass. It affords another level of flexibility, both sonically and playing-wise. I've done it either way, but in this case, I split it. My first run through would be something like this. Here we come in with drums. Oops. I don't have something enabled. So, oh, I know what it is. What's happening here is that my main kit is actually being fed off, or split rather, in Superior Drummer. Where am I here? Using the mixer. We have all these outs over here. And those outs correspond to these So there we are. So I have this one on 3 and 4. I don't know if you can see in that resolution, but I have out, 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 3, 4 there. So what we have here, let me just give you the basic sound. Well, actually, yeah, let's leave the hat guide in for now. So here we go. Just kick and snare, basically. So I do a run through like this. And that can be a challenge because you really need to know the tune well. If you don't know where you're at, if you don't know when the verse is coming up or, you know, the next chorus, you're not going to really be able to play the part, I guess. You know, there's a bunch of things you can do to help yourself out. If you're clever enough with the routing, you can basically play along to the track. That means that you'll have to get the exact tempo of the track and bring it in. I find it far easier just to learn the track really well. So there's our kick and snare. This is really straight off the mix that I did, so all effects are enabled except for this track, the snare noise. And then I have some of these tracks bust out. Well, the snare track in particular bust out to a bunch of stuff. One of them being this, the AMS RMX. And that gives us that big, lush snare sound. And we also have some gating happening. Oh, that's just a bus. We have some gating happening over here with the signal generator in front of it. So let's play the kick and snare again, and I'll solo and unsolo, and you can hear what all this good stuff is doing. So you can hear the snare with the RMX. I'll mute it or unsolo it. And let me take out the signal generator. Put them back in. Can you hear that? Just kind of gives it an extra liveliness, an extra crispiness. Here we go with the RMX again. Now we're in the chorus. Now, what we also have going on with the snare is a little bit of Sheps. I really like this plugin. I've really been enjoying using it. I have it on many, many tracks in this session and in just about everything I have going on right now. I just really like the way it sounds. I like the way you can play around with the drive, either here or over here. Well, even in the input, if you want to drive the input. And the EQs just sound great. Got your high pass over here, which is incredibly useful. So we have a little bit of Sheps going on with that. And gating the snare just a little bit. It's honestly not really doing too much. Now on the kick, again, I have the Sheps happening. I'm giving it a boost here at a 4/8 frequency just to give it a little more of the attack. Here we have just a real small amount of a soft tube version of the DBX 160. Now this thing, the boom, I really love it. Let's hear what it sounds like with or without the boom. Let me bypass it now. So you see the basic sound is there, but when you bring it in, I love it. It's one of my new favorite plugins. Okay, so we have our basic kick and snare, and it's kind of funny how just the hat guide sounds okay. You can get away with it. Let's click off the hat guide, and let's bring in the real cymbals. Now, it can be pretty tricky to play the cymbals after the fact because you end up doing things, well, you end up with the ability to do stuff that would be impossible to do if you were playing it all at the same time. And the challenge is to not take advantage of that necessarily anyway, and to play as you would have played if you played it all together. So let's hear some of that. So as you can hear, there are some more embellishments happening with the hi-hat, and of course we have our crash cymbal. I don't think I used a lot of ride in this song, if any. And later on in the song, let's jump, I don't know, let's go over here to one of the last choruses. There's definitely some open close hi-hat thing happening. Our toms are noticeably absent, so let's bring those in from Superior Drummer. And again, just to review, if we open up Superior Drummer, it has its, well, this is the default view, but it has its own mixer. This is a heck of a lot easier to do in Superior Drummer than it is in some of the other software I've used. You basically can output to these out 1, out 3, out 5, out 6. It's really, really straightforward. For example, over here, I already showed you the kick, but let's see here. I know these are tiny, but here we have a floor tom and a rack tom, and I have them going to out 7, 8, out 7, 8. And if we go over here to our toms, for the input, you go to Plugin, then you go to Superior Drummer, Multi-Out, Main Kit. And there I have it checked on 7 and 8. Let's go to that last chorus again, because I know there's some toms there. Okay, let's talk about toms a little bit more. I have this Q happening, and this is a new plugin for me, and I really like it. Just trying to kind of kick up the toms. Toms can be kind of boring unless you really start to drive them a bit, even with, using great samples. Just, they need help. So let's listen with and without the EQ. Let me bypass the EQ. And here we go. Actually, can't really hear what's going on with that because we have the toms also go into the AMX reverb. So let me bring that send down. Let's hear this. There we go. So let's bring in the EQ. So you can hear that really brings out the attack. EQ is a winner. Now let's go back to our RMS bus. And I'm going to go back to 0. That's where it was. So quickly, let's talk about buses. In the audio world, one of the coolest things you can do is to take your track and bus it away. So as opposed to, just going here to the main out, you're sending another copy of the signal here. You click here, and then you can send it to a bus. Now you can name these so they're a lot easier to use. Like I could have said, oh, let's make that the RMX bus, but the session's not too complicated. And what happens then is you can send it to a bus, and then you can make that bus, so this one here, bus 3 and 4, you can send it to, you can make another track the input of bus 3 and 4. So it goes from here to here, and this track is empty. It has nothing on it except for this plugin. And one of the great things about that is, for example, instead of opening an AMS RMX reverb on the tom track and opening one on the snare track over here, you can use one AMS RMX and feed everything into it. And that becomes critical when you're managing your resources. No matter how powerful your computer is, you're always managing resources. If you think of the analogy of being in the analog world, your studio might just have only one reverb unit. You probably wouldn't have 4 RMXs. So again, you'd bus the tracks that needed the reverb to it. Of course, they're all going to use the same sound, but I think that kind of helps, or it really helps actually, with keeping the session coherent, as if everything was played in the same room, for example. Okay, so let's hear a little bit of that one more time. We'll jump further to the end. Now, if you are eagle-eared, not sure that's really a thing, but let's go with it. You might have heard some popping here and there. It's a problem I'm having with my rig right now. It just pops and clicks and crackles intermittently, randomly. I haven't been able to figure it out exactly. I don't want to get into that because that's just a whole nother thing. I apologize if you do hear those clicks and pops. The great thing is that when I go to render the audio, the clicks and pops are not there. They're only happening when I'm playing from the session live, as it were. So we do the drums, and so that's our foundation. You might think I would do the bass next, and that would make sense, but in this case, I went to the keyboards next. We start with a pad. Let's bring in the main pad. So you notice in the beginning, the part is actually simplified, and you'll see what I mean because later on it will sound more familiar. It actually surprised me that in the beginning it's simplified. Listen. See, he hits it right there again. And again here. And it doesn't do that in the beginning. Okay, now we're into the second part of the verse. Chorus. Okay, what we're basically doing there is B minor to F minor. And when you get to the middle part, it goes all major. G major, F sharp major, E major. And then when we go to the chorus, so it goes back to B minor, and then and let's bring in this track just because I want to illustrate something. So there's our high pad, and let's make that active. Now, what I want to illustrate is this. Let's make this track big. This is a MIDI track. So what happens is this. In Pro Tools, you go to Track, New, you go to Stereo, and you choose Instrument Track, and you hit Create. And what I usually do is just leave this on all, so all MIDI channels are responding. And then here on the first insert, you bring in your instrument. So I go to multi-channel plugin, instrument, complete control. I prefer working in control rather than in contact, but we don't need to discuss that right now. So here is our instrument. This one is based on the Super JP Pad 2 preset, and I'm using it for the high sort of stabs in the chorus. And if I close that for a second, you will see that here we are. These are the actual notes, okay? And if I go to my little hand finger tool here, I can actually play them. Listen. Oh, let me solo it, and here we go. Right? Within the track, it sounds like this. So just to give you a point of reference, I'll bring in the vocal right now just so you can hear that little part of it. Let's bring it in just a little bit before.
The union of the snake is on the climb.
So you get the idea. So when you're working in MIDI, you bring in an instrument track, you choose your virtual instrument, then you play your keyboard. And we can go back to the medium view. So let's back out. Let's get reorganized here. So far we have our click track and we have all our drums. Notice I've color coded everything here. It's a good practice, especially when your sessions start getting more complex. Now we're clicking red. We have all our drums, percussion in green here. Oh, I didn't bring in the cowbell. Let's bring in the cowbell and listen to that for a little bit. Let's go to verse 2 for that one.
Nightshades on a warning.
Vocal on. And that is this instrument here, Drum Lab, Cowbell. And if you watched my Union of the Snake video, you'll see me playing the pad, the cat pad, the KAT pad. And I'll be doing a more in-depth review on that pad a bit later. The beginning was really challenging, and I'm talking about this little part here. There's definitely some overdrive happening there, and that was just naturally happening in the plugin. And the only remaining keyboard then is the swells, and that goes hand in hand with the sax. Well, we'll get to that later. And they sound like this. And of course, the sax continues on to do other stuff like this. This is the sax sound. It's just this random little virtual instrument called Band. I actually bought another sax plugin and I didn't like it as much as this one. I don't even remember what it was called. I'll have to play with it a bit later. So where are we now? We're at bass now. Believe it or not, I think I did the guitars before I did the bass. But since we're going top to bottom, now let's listen to a little bit of bass. The signal flow for the bass was my Area Pro SB1000 going into the Apollo interface, and I don't know if I can get away with showing this while we're in Pro Tools, but this is the Apollo interface. What I don't think I can do right now, because I'll run out of plugin power, is show you how I record the bass. That involves bringing in the Manley Box channel strip. Well, no, that's not a channel strip. It's just the Manley Box. It's kind of like a channel strip. What the heck? Let's try to bring it in. It's probably going to complain. As a matter of fact, if you go down here to the sessions, you can save sessions, when I'm tracking bass, I use this one, Bass Neve Manley, which means I'm plugging my bass into my Rupert Neve Direct box, and then I'm loading in the plugins that I want on that channel. And let me load it and hope that it doesn't crash. Just what I thought. One or more UAD plugins have been disabled. So this is the channel that we normally record bass with. Oh, this is fine. I thought it was going to disable the plugins in my session, but it just disabled this one. I'm not going to go into all the sessions, but this is a fabulous sounding plugin. You just set your gain up, set your threshold. I'm pretty conservative with it when I'm tracking. I'd say maybe we're just getting maximum of maybe 3 dB compression. If you look over here on the output section, I'm not even really making up, just taming the peaks, as it were, and just really trying to take advantage of the rich, I don't know, it's almost like a gooey sound that this thing makes. What's important is that when you track this way through the Apollo, you're committing to it. I can't change the sounds on this box thing and have it affect the signal I already recorded. And I'm really enjoying working that way and just kind of committing to a sound. And one of the advantages of that, let me go back here to default. One of the advantages of committing to the sound and committing early is that I have to do less plugins here. I'm not doing much here. This is a chorus, basically, the little microchip. Sounds great. I have it here in mode 2. And why don't we hear that? And then I'll click on and off the microshift so you can see what it's doing. Okay, let's bypass it and play it again. Let me get in closer. Just the recording itself, I mean, I was really pleased with it. I really like what the Neve Direct Box does to the sound, and in combination with the Manley plugin, just really happy with it. It does something to the way you play it too. It gives it a very satisfying feel. I'm not doing it justice with the way I'm explaining it, but just listen to that. Just really fat. It's just got this really rich sound. And if you saw some of the comments on my YouTube video for this track, you may have noticed that I actually forgot to put the SB1000 in active mode. So what you're hearing is just completely passive. It sounds great, if I do say so myself. Let's bring in the little microshift back in again. Let me get to the second one here. So you see, it just kind of widens it up. It spreads it out a little bit. A lot of the times with plugins and mixing and all this stuff, you're making a bunch of subtle changes. Oh, we have a guest here. He might have moved things around, didn't he? Hey, look at him. Oh, I'm so excited. Shadow came out. You guys usually see Sugar. He must be getting hungry. So we have our little microshift. We had our DBX just doing a little bit of ducking. Shadow, come on. And again, we have our sheps. Surprise, surprise. Let's listen to what the bass is doing in the bridge. Because if you noticed, I gave the bridge bass the Arena album treatment. I wanted to show what John was kind of doing back then with oh, Shadow is so funny. Cats, they just always come up at just the right times, don't they? Anyhow, like I was saying, I wanted to show the part John was doing around the 84 era. So here we go. if you notice, I did a little embellishment here. There's a bit of a quick rake before it goes to this last lick. It goes tigga-doom. Right there. Tigga-doo. And then I also do a little bit of embellishment with that last lick. And we go back in. Okay, so that's the bass, recorded direct with a Rupert Neve direct box and a Manley plugin and a bit of after treatment with the micro shift. Then we move on to the guitar. Now the guitar I got really lucky with. It's basically what I was able to do to get this sound. Was, and let's go back to the Apollo console, was to load up, here I'm going to load up Dirty Guitar. That doesn't surprise me. And load up this wonderful plugin. This is the Tweet plugin. It's just a great plugin. I quite literally tuned up the Gibson Nighthawk, strung with flats, by the way. Yes, flat wound strings. That guitar has had flat wound strings since I did my Smiths cover, the Ask cover. I plugged it in, and what was the preset I went to over here? Oh geez, I can't remember. It's something maybe something 60s it said, or something like that. Cinnamon 60s Girl. Okay, so I loaded up Cinnamon 60s Girl, and I think I might have just slightly played around with this tone knob. I might have brought one of these mics, maybe this mic to a bit down. Well, why don't we go to the default, and we'll see how it changes. That's what I did. So I brought this mic up, this mic 1 up, and I unmuted it. So anyhow, I just played with the preset a little bit. I think using presets is great. Maybe when I was a little younger, I thought that, it was kind of cheating to use the preset, and now I got to do everything from scratch. And as I got older, I realized somebody put the time into that preset, probably somebody that knows the plugin better than I do. So why not use the preset as a jumping off point? There's nothing wrong with that. In this case, it really paid off. Again, we're committing to that sound. I'm not recording the guitar completely dry and then trying out 10 different plugins on it. I'm getting the sound I want from the get-go. I'm really enjoying working that way. Because when you do that, it not only affects the way you play that sound as opposed to playing a completely dry guitar or completely dry, whatever instrument you're recording, but then the sound you record informs the next sound. It lets you make a better decision about the next sound you're going to record. Let's listen to the guitar. Oh, we have a little bit of a micro shift going on the guitar too, so let's listen to what that's doing. Let's bypass it. Now on the guitar, I think it's a bit more noticeable, so let's bring it in. As you can tell, it's really widening it up, and there's another trick up the sleeve with the guitar, and we're going to get to that, but I want to play you more of the guitar. Let's go to the first verse. Here we go. And now that little bit right there, I think I was listening to Warren Hewart talk about somebody saying this to him. Maybe it was Eddie Kramer, I don't know. But it was a great quote, something like, leave the effing mistakes in. And you could say this was a mistake, but I just thought it sounded pretty cool, and certainly not something Andy played, but this little part over here, I just really liked it. Might even make a cool loop. Let's see if we can make that a cool loop. Yeah, I like that. Well, moving on. Now this would be a good time to let you all know that I just played the guitar the way I heard it, and it might not be exactly what Andy's playing. Honestly, I can't really hear what he's playing all too well in the studio version, and in the live version there's a bit more clarity, and he does change the part up. For example, he follows the bass when you're in the verses. He follows the bass, and I did that in the bridge. Let's play that real quick. Let's skip ahead when we're in the bridge. So that the rundown from the A chromatic down to the F sharp, boom, 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 boom. So he does that all throughout the song in the live version. So I try to incorporate that here in the verse. But yeah, in the choruses, it's kind of hard to hear what he's doing. So I just took the approach of kind of keeping it simple in these first choruses and then building it up for the other ones. Let's see what I did there. Second chorus. And then let's see what I did in the last chorus. Oh, in the last chorus, we're gonna, oh, before we do that, let's go to the bridge so we can hear that cool B minor and 7th chord. And like my good buddy Carl pointed out, that really sounds like a very Hendrix chord, some kind of 7 sharp 9th or something. But really, it's just a B minor 7th chord, B, D, A, with an F sharp on top. And at the end, we have classic Andy doing some really funky riffs just with the 2 top strings. Top meaning highest, skinniest strings. And then we go to, let's just skip to the last chorus here. Now, there's a bit more secret sauce involved with the guitar, and there are a couple of other instruments going into it as well. Let's see here. Actually, quite a bit. So I called this track Ocean Way because it contains this, the UAD Ocean Way Studios plugin. And in a nutshell, what that does is allow you to pretend you recorded these instruments at Ocean Way Studios, either in the small room or the bigger room. You can play with the placement, and you can play with the microphones and all sorts of stuff. And I wanted to get somewhere in between a lush sound and maybe like a medium room sound. And so I played around with the settings. When you add in the ambience of the Ocean Way, this is what you get. the Cowbell is going through that. There's a lot of it going through the cowbell. All the pads are going through it, and I think it lends a real uniformity to the sound. Even the vocal is going through that, not the bass. I didn't really want to give the bass that kind of a treatment. I just wanted to keep it dry and punchy a little bit more. I'm going to turn it off. And turn it back on. So yeah, it really adds a certain sense of space. And again, when you pump a bunch of other tracks using busing techniques into that one plugin, you can really pump up your uniformity. Okay, so let's play the Sax Solo. Now, if you look carefully at the beginning of the snake video, you'll see that the complete control keyboard, if you have it on that track, it will play the light guide. So you can actually see what notes are being played. So if you want to see what notes are being played, you should take a look at the video. Here we go. I think that's pretty good for a virtual instrument. Now, it's nothing like a human being playing a real saxophone, but I want to show you a cool little trick here. I sat down, I spent the time, I learned the notes, but I do not have the skill to play this. Just how quick it is, I wasn't going to be able to do it, not in the time frame that I wanted to get this done in anyway. So one cool thing you can do in Pro Tools, here's a loop of that, is if you hit shift and space, listen what happens. Pretty cool, right? What's even cooler than that, if you record enable the track, you can actually record at that speed, and that's exactly what I did for this. I, of course, gave myself a pre-roll, let's say a bar, and I hit record, and I played it like this. It can sound pretty sinister when you slow it down like that. Let's listen to that first bar before that. That sounds really cool. Let me play it again. We'll just loop that part. It's fun. That's pretty funny. Okay, so that's the sax. Now, my intention with the voice was just to sing enough to let you know where you are in the song, so that if you were playing along, you'd know where you were. Let's go ahead and see what I did with the vocal. We're always going to be de-essing a bit. Here I'm de-essing at 6K, bring it down about 5. Here I'm filtering a little bit, just kind of removing some of the mud. With HEQ here, I'm just taking it a little bit down here at 1K or so, -4. This plugin, CLA Vocals, is great. I really like it because you can do a bunch of things in it. So you don't have to load up 4 or 5 plugins. You can mess with tonal balances here, compression, reverb, which I have dialed down because I'm going to get that from the Ocean Way delay pitch. So let's hear what it sounds like without it.
If I listen close, I can hear them sing. Oh.
Now let's bring it in.
If I listen close, I can hear them sing. Oh. Voices in your body.
So you can see it definitely adds a bit of lushness to the vocal sound. And another thing I want to point out really quickly is that we have a pretty awesome chord here.
If I listen close, I can hear them sing. Oh.
So on that whoa, 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 the top note is actually an F. So if you think about it, it's E, G sharp, B, D, F. So it's like an E7 flat 9. Pretty amazing chord to have in a pop song. Hats off to the Duran boys. I'd love to know who in particular thought of that harmony. Simon, Andy, chime in please.
If I listen close, I can hear them sing. Oh.
In terms of the backing tracks, I employed a different technique where I'm sending in other words, I'm not busing them here like I did with the other tracks. I'm directly sending their outputs to a bus and then bringing them in here in what I call the vocal backing bus. And same thing here, little filter, just cleaning it up with a little bit of EQ, bringing it all together with the LA2A, and a little bit of the little plate here, just a little bit of extra reverb. Here we have what's going on in the middle, the Oh No Not Again from my super secret special guest star.
Oh no, not again.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little something, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.